Hello and welcome to Talk on Nevada. I'm Andy Matthews. Tracking student achievement is the subject of this week's show. And joining me is Karen Gray, an education researcher at the Nevada Policy Research Institute. Karen, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andy.
Karen, you've spent a lot of time since joining NPRI looking at the Clark County School District. You've done a lot of excellent reporting on the district and the school board and some other education-related issues. What is it about the Clark County School District that signaled to you that was really calling out for the kind of scrutiny that you've brought to it?
It's been a process, having been involved as a parent in the school board for 19 years. It was the school board's adoption of policy governance and their hands-off approach to handling district matters and the way that they created a system that set parents to the outside of what was going on. And from that, I started to realize somebody needed to scrutinize the district and bring some accountability.
You mentioned accountability, and that really is crucial, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, is this idea of what is the performance, what has the performance been for the district. And in a recent commentary you wrote for MPRI, you got into this concept of adequate yearly progress. Put that in context for us. What do we mean when we talk about AYP?
Well, AYP is the measurement used under No Child Left Behind. The No Child Left Behind Act anticipates that all students in the United States will meet state standards at proficiency level by 2014. So no state in the nation actually has that proficiency. So all states then created yearly benchmarks which they tried to achieve on their way to becoming proficient. And so AYP is actually obtaining that yearly benchmark sent by the state.
That's a key point, and you made a point to note this in your commentary, that achieving AYP doesn't mean that students are necessarily proficient. It just means they're getting there. They've taken certain steps and they've reached certain benchmarks on their way to obtaining proficiency. Now, obviously, the various schools have a lot of reason to want to achieve AYP, to be able to say, hey, look, we've reached some of these benchmarks. Is that the case?
Yes, they do. Under No Child Left Behind, if a school doesn't meet adequately yearly progress, I think it's 2 years in a row if they become on the watch list, then students have a choice to go to another school. And then, of course, the funding going to that school goes to another school.
And I'm sure for a public relations standpoint too, it's nice for a school to be able to go out and tell parents or whomever, or the public, that yes, we are getting the job done, we are meeting certain standards. You point out, however, in your commentary that we, to a certain extent, ought to be aware of some of these reports of schools achieving AYP, that the system can, so to speak, be gamed. How is that the case?
Well, there's an appeal system under AYP. And what happens is the schools, when the students take their test, they receive the raw scores. And when they calculate those, if the students or the school doesn't meet the benchmark, there are a couple of factors that go into the appeal. You can appeal, say, a subgroup. There's 8 subgroups where students are categorized by race, free and reduced lunch, special education, and English language learners. And so if a subgroup doesn't make the percentage, then you file the appeal. And in the appeal, I think the 2 key appeals that actually bump a school up to AYP is what's called a confidence interval. And with that, it's sort of like that scientific plus or minus kind of thing. And well, in the state, we only go to the positive. We don't say 31% plus or minus 13%. We say plus 13%.
So if you're within a certain range of AYP, they basically bump your score up.
Yes, it will bump your score up, and then you can actually achieve AYP based on this confidence interval, which are usually very high numbers. Mm-hmm. So, and then the other thing, which is a new concept that the state just implemented with the last school year tests, is averaging, where you take your numbers from previous years up to 3 years and you average them together, and then of course you will still add your confidence interval, and you can come up to, amazingly, I've seen numbers go from in the 30s, 30% up to 55% just
by playing with the numbers.
By
basically.
playing with the numbers, averaging them, and adding a confidence interval.
So if you're a Clark County parent, what's your takeaway from all of this? As you're hearing these reports coming out in the media about school achievement and AYP, what do you need to know more than anything about what all of this means?
I think the two most important things for parents to understand about AYP is that AYP does not mean that your school or your students are proficient. If you make AYP, it means that you met the benchmark on the way to actually achieving state standards. And then the second thing is for parents to question the schools. Did we make AYP based on an appeal, or did we make AYP based on our raw scores? And that there's a big difference there.
All right, Karen, we're going to leave it at that for today. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
I want to thank all of you, of course, for tuning in to this week's edition of Talk on Nevada. I'm Andy Matthews, and I want to remind you to check us out on the web. npri.org is the address for more information on this topic and more private solutions to public challenges facing our Silver State. Thanks. We'll see you next time.